Oh, man, that music just makes me want to dance.
Does it? You're not dancing right now, but you got your hokers on. Welcome aboard.
Today the old man dance
going. It is March 25th, 2021. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, and we are episode, I'm firm on this, we are 463. I called it. I nailed it before we even had to look it up today.
I'm really impressed.
I know you are. I got one thing right today because the rest of this day has pretty much felt like it hasn't gone very well. Woke up with what I would consider allergy face. I feel like I got hit hard with the pollen yesterday. And my truck's covered. Talked about this on Zoom, I think, kind of ad nauseum. But, you know, I know these flowers are beautiful, and it's all part of nature, and it's all part of the circle of life. But, dear God, as beautiful as these flowers, we're looking at this like dog out the window. It crushes me. It crushes my soul. I wake up. I played basketball with Hayden yesterday after school, and all I'm thinking of is I'm just inhaling pollen right now. That's it. I'm just inhaling it. Woke up this morning with the old allergy crusty eye, and just felt, kind of whatever. The Claritin, hopefully it's working. He's kicking more, kind of like we'll kick in this it's for a minute. But yeah, it's severe weather too. We had to go we were going to record earlier today, and they abruptly decided to shut down Hayden's school and close at 1, so I went and grabbed him, took him home, and now I'm back. Now we're here, and we're persevering for podcast 463, a Q&A, which are usually some of my favorite podcasts that we do.
Usually some of them?
Usually, I mean, they're not always, because, if we're being honest, they're not always great questions, but today we have awesome questions, and I feel pretty confident going through them. It's just we've been doing this for 5 years, right? So we've hit on a lot of these topics and a lot of these questions quite frequently in many of almost all of our podcasts. But so it's kind of more of a refresher, which is kind of interesting as people think hey, you're going to run out of topics, in triathlon. When we don't talk about triathlon every single podcast, talk about life and everything in between. But people forget, and you have new listeners. There's really no such thing as old information. It can always kind of be rehashed and kind of gone over in a different way to help you absorb better. And that's, I think, what we'll go through today once we hop into some of the questions from our closed group. Yeah,
and I actually started the day off with a nice dog walk in the rain.
I caught you. Saw. I did. Yeah. I saw you. I was like, man, that's dedication.
Poor Maddie. Took her out.
You're a good dad dog.
Yeah, we walked about a mile in the rain, and she got all
what was
sloppy.
Your pace? Was it PR?
No, it was zone 2. Zone 1, zone 2.
Did you peak yesterday?
No, I didn't.
Did Maddie upload a train peaks and see if she set any peak performances?
She did not.
No?
No. So where was I going to... I wanted to start the podcast off with a quote I had from Born to Run.
That has nothing to do with Maddie running.
Yeah, it does, because you said zone...
was she dogging it?
Oh, man.
I know. I'm going to give you one more second to figure this out before I do our second open of the podcast.
Okay,
let me go into the second open while you're searching. While you're doing.
No. Keep talking.
Okay, good. I'll do it because
here we go.
Right now you look like the old guy that needs his bifocals to put down on the edge of his nose to find it. Go ahead.
All right. Since you're talking about what did we PR and all that kind of thing, and I found this quote last night, and I just think it's always a great reminder. It's from the book Born to Run, and it says, "Nearly all runners do their slow runs too fast and their fast runs too slow," Ken Murky says.
Smart.
So they're just training their bodies to burn sugar, which is the last thing a distance runner wants. You've got enough fat stored to run to California. So the more you train your body to burn fat instead of sugar, the longer your limited sugar tank is going to last. The way to activate your fat burning furnace is staying below your aerobic threshold, your hard breathing point during endurance runs.
He's not lying.
So the reason I want to bring that up, because it seems like the eternal question, it's like people, I get this zone too, but what but that's what it's all about.
It is. No, and I agree. And we'll open here in a minute, but he is 100, obviously he's 100% right. The book is a classic among runners, and it is like you look at it, fat is, no matter how skinny you want to be or how fit you want to look, fat is actually incredibly important, right, to your body. And at least for endurance athletes, you have to have fat on you to burn. And if you want, because the higher you go, once you get zone 3 and zone 4, you're no longer burning. Most people consider your aerobic zone, as people would always call it, is that's your fat burning zone, right? Is that zone 2, which is breathes aerobically, which if you think about it quickly, and I think the way that society kind of like perpetuates this is like the harder you go, the more calories, right, that you might burn. But it's always the question of like what kind of calories, right? It's like, are you burning the quick ones, which is sugar, which is like the ones you're going to burn like immediately? But then that's a very, very small tank, right? The amount of sugar and you know, glucose you're able to actually hold on to is very limited. Now, the amount of fat that we can hold on to, obviously, I think we all know this, is exponential. But it's important to have if you want to burn. So no, it's a great quote, and it is like, you know, I always tell people, I think this was actually one of the questions today was, you know, how do you know if you're, you know, in zone 2? And I always kind of try to simplify it as much as I can with, if you can breathe in and out of your nose 85, 90, 95% of the time, then I would consider yourself an aerobic, right? It's like if you can, because obviously, like, you know, I'm obviously no scientist, neither one of us are professionals or experts in really any way, shape, or form, but aerobic means with oxygen. Anaerobic means without oxygen. So if you can actually run while breathing through your nose and doing it comfortably, for the most part, there's nothing wrong with breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, because you're still getting enough. And then some people, obviously, they got, like, you know, their nose broke 3 times in like 4th grade and they have their mouth breathers.
Right, yeah.
You know, like, you can't do that.
It's hard, man.
It is. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing. It's hard to understand, though, and feel like, but I'm going too slow. I feel like I should be, if I want to go faster, or if I want to burn more calories and get leaner, I need to go faster, right? Mm-hmm. But then the way you have to kind of scale that back is as well, if you're going to go faster, you're going to quickly burn that sugar and burn less fat. And you're also going to be able to do it for a much less amount of time than if you stayed in your aerobic zone, which people call it, you know, AD, or your all day zone. You can do this all day long, right? So you can burn fat all day at this pace and this effort and not have the same consequences or the same recovery needed as you would going at a higher intensity. It does seem very, very, very counterintuitive, right? It's the same way it seems counterintuitive for people to think, oh, well, and you know, this is probably the way that I phrase this personally. It's not run slow to get fast. It's run the appropriate speed so you can run often and run easy, right? Easy, I think, is the way that you should probably phrase it. It's to run easy, not slow. But your easier is going to be slower than your fast pace. However you want to word it, however you want to phrase it, to make yourself feel better, make you kind of buy into it. It is proven. It is not a myth. It is not something, I think I've really bought into it. You're either like, it's like saying, I think I'm going to buy into this oxygen thing. You know, I think I'm going to go with the scientific, yeah, okay, we all need it. We all have it. It's like proven. We all need oxygen. We all need water. We all need food. We all need sleep. Same thing goes with, you know, what people consider polarized training or zone 2 training. Like, it's not this myth. It's not something you can want to buy into or not. You can choose to adhere to it or not adhere to it, but it is proven. Every single marathoner does it. You know, if you look at their breakdown and their mileage and like what they do in zone, like, I think people would be shocked at the elite level marathoners and how much slower their easy runs are than their marathon pace. Minutes and minutes slower. But you think, well, how is that? You know, how can you gotta, if you want to be fast, you gotta train fast. You know, and you see the guy that, you know, works out twice a week. It's like, if I'm really working my speed work, and like, how long can you hold that for? I don't know, half mile. But it's an important system to work, and it is. I think it's still fundamentally challenging for people to really kind of wrap their brain on, because it does kind of seem counterintuitive to what we believe in terms of, you know, it's the same thing as like, oh, well, you can actually work less and make more money and have a better life and do better at work. No, and I have to sleep less and work more. It's like, you know, that's the same thing. That's kind of the philosophy we've kind of bought into as a society.
Yeah. And I'll tell you how I got confused on it. We can move on, but when aerobics came out in the 80s, it just seemed like this high intensity thing. And I think you get that kind of distorted in your brain about aerobic activity being intensity, you know, like, come on, push it. You know, that was sort of the thing. And it's sort of like, you know, you can go further, slower on regular fuel, but like, you know, it's like burning rocket fuel. That stuff just goes quick, you know?
Yeah, you don't see aerobics classes or these high-intensity classes for 2 hours, right? They're like 30, 45 minutes, like you're going high octane and you're just ready to rip it the entire time. You're not redlining, but that's, you know, it's also, I mean, we're going way off here. It's a business model, right? Like if you think about it, okay, we're going to have a 2-hour class today, where now you're going to have one class instead of having 6 classes, you know, right? Or 4 classes. Like it's about revenue. It's about a business. It's more, appetizing to see, well, like I can do 30 minutes. Hey, tomorrow morning's spin class is going to be 2 hours zone 2. Participation 2, right? There's not going to be anybody signed up for it. Then you're going to have like the following class, 30-minute HIIT class, led by John, and it's going to be sold out, right? Because it's short, it's sweet. That's where our attention span is these days. That's where people want to, because you get a release. So you get like a huge release from just, getting out there and just hammering it for 30 minutes and you'll be done, which is also totally fine if that's your goal and agenda.
Who's John? Is he good?
He's the best spin instructor at the Y. I was going to throw out some other names, but I try not to do that. I also try not to skip totally over our intro, which we did today. If it's your first time tuning in and you're still hanging out and you're being like, hey, I wonder where the hell these guys are going, why they're even still here after 5 years.
You never know.
You never know. We appreciate you tuning in and giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. So for the most part, we talk about it all. We talk about triathlon. We talk about life. Sometimes we'll go in depth, which I think we will today on some of these topics that we got from our closed Facebook group. But we'll go in depth into swim, bike, run, training. We'll do race recaps. We'll do race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I just kind of have an open, honest discussion about what we're both going through in life as coaches and athletes. We've been doing this, this podcast for 5 years. We've been coaches and athletes for 10 plus. We have our closed Facebook group, which is, we're going to let that kind of drive the conversation for today's cast and I think on Monday's cast. That's Crushing Iron Group if you want to search there. And we just kind of take the pulse of the community. Again, have that open, honest discussion.
34 new members this week.
34, yeah. And there really is. There's a lot of awesome people in there. And as races continue to happen, you'll see more and more discussion that I think for a lot of people seem relevant to the season and to them, and hopefully you'll participate in that. That's what we do. No sponsors, no ads, one agenda. That's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, it's all free.
Can I get to the first question already?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's stick
with
with the theme of running.
Yeah, we'll stick with the theme of running again. We're going to go through and get through as many as we can today, questions, and then we'll probably try to finish them up if we can on Monday. But Matt Clark, who I call Tank Top Matt, because every time I see him, he's in a tank top. He's an athlete that I work with. He said, Coach Robbie, are running power meters a useful tool? And my thing is always this, and I actually just get off the phone a little bit ago with an athlete who is fairly new to the sport. She was asking about running power meters, about cycling power meters, which is the one most people have heard of, which has been around for quite a long while. And she said, it's kind of expensive to get into. And I said, is it useful? 100%, right? I think power meters for cycling are totally useful. I think they actually help your run more than they help your cycling when you race, just from a pacing standpoint. But what I said to her first was, when you're beginning in the sport, I think it's incredibly important if you're a newer athlete that's getting your feet wet, whether it's just in running, just in cycling, or triathlon in general, to learn and understand and measure your own output first before you create too many input opportunities. And what I mean by that is everyone kind of gets into the sport of triathlon, which is way too gadget and gear heavy. And they want to buy. They want to do all these kind of things, and it's too much. It's too much input, and they don't fully understand their own output. So you end up kind of cross-wiring things and not being able to fully understand. I'm not. I don't want to say this. I don't want to say that I'm not sold on running power meters. I think there's still a lot to be known, and I think they would even tell you that Stride is like the one that's most commonly used, but they kind of backpedaled. And so if you can actually go online and read this article by Outside Magazine that Alex Hutchinson did, he like one of the 5 or 6 probably leading sports scientists in the world. And he did an article on this. Stride they came out I think like 2014, 2015. And they kind of backpedaled into what they actually measure. So like if you, and I'm going to read just kind of a small excerpt. And this is kind of why in the beginning, I'm not saying I'm a full believer of it yet, because I still think there are way too many variabilities in terms of what the actual use is. I wasn't a fan of it and didn't believe in it at all when they first came out with it. But let me read a small little excerpt of why it's so complex. And he says, no one gets tied in knots about this stuff in the cycling world. Like in talking about the cycling versus running power meters. Power is power, and it's considered the gold standard tool for effective pacing. Agreed on cycling. The reason for this is that mechanical and metabolic power are almost perfectly correlated in cycling. If your power meter detects that you're pressing 15% harder on the pedals, that means you're burning calories 15% more quickly. The number on the display, so your head unit, your Garmin, whatever you use, is that mechanical power. But the reason people care is that it tells you what's happening with your metabolic power. It is almost a perfect kind of 1-to-1 ratio. However, running, unfortunately, is 100% totally different. Stride's newest white paper, which is like their data, which is written by one of their in-house scientists and two of their advisors, identifies 3 reasons that mechanical and metabolic power don't have a consistent relationship. And these are, I think, the most important things why I'm kind of coming around, but they're finally acknowledging this, is that that mechanical and metabolic power don't have a consistent relationship in running. They just don't. One is that the motion of your limbs is far more variable than in cycling, which means muscle efficiency also varies. The second is that each foot strike requires you to absorb forces rather than producing them, right? So think about cycling, you're spinning, you're not absorbing any force, where if you're running on concrete, you're absorbing force, which takes up energy. But you'll still spend metabolic energy cushioning these landings. And the third is that you store and then recycle energy in your spring-like tendons, which each drive boosting your mechanical power at no metabolic cost. Basically saying, like, it would be irrelevant if you only ever ran on a smooth level treadmill, basically like a confined, bubble or a lab. But the relationship between mechanical and metabolic power would be hard to calculate. I think so they've kind of come around to basically saying it's no longer a way to manage or tell you how you're producing power, but more so how to monitor your energy, right? What you think about is it's not a bad concept in terms of most I think novice athletes, when they buy it, they use it to how much power critical power am I able to produce? How can I pace myself more appropriately when what they're trying to say is, like, if you think about all the different variables, and then I also have trouble going through the athletes who have different mechanics, so they're going uphill, they're going downhill, how your power is, the impact on your quads and your bones and your ligaments and your tendons are impacted when you're running hard downhill. I think it's a lot to sift through. And I think they've kind of come around to saying it's more of like a metabolic, how much energy are you expending? So basically, how many calories are you burning? How much energy are you using? It's not so much a power thing, which is kind of what they originally said. And so I think it's, again, do I think it's a useful tool? Sure. Yes, it's a useful tool to have. Do I think it can improve your running exponentially? No. Do I think you're better off learning how to run solely on, understanding your own energy and your own self first? 100%. Just like with cycling, understanding your own output before you add too many. Because you see athletes like this with cycling too. They've got, they got a power meter, they got a heart rate monitor, they have this, they have that. They have so many things going on. It's kind of hard to really absorb things, understand what you really have. Running by feel, I think, is still going to be incredibly important. And you still see most elite level marathoners, and they run on, they run on feel, they run on RP, they run on effort. Same goes for, the highest level, triathletes. You're going to have some that do, but, so I think it's useful. I think, unfortunately, and this is the same thing goes with actually cycling power meters as well, is that I'm not sure that, most athletes truly understand how to use their tool to the fullest extent. A lot of people, I would argue, if they have a power meter, they have just a really expensive bike computer, because they're just not really sure how to use the power meter to get the most out of their cycling. Same thing, I think, goes for running.
Admittedly, I know nothing about running power meters, but it would seem, based on what you're saying and how they're kind of described, is that if it was like a perfectly flat course and everything like that, you could kind of get a beat on what's going on with your run stride or whatever. But secondly, my question from the beginning on these things has kind of been, and when you said they're starting to think about it in terms of measuring energy expenditure, that makes a lot more sense to me, because it would make sense. Like, my first thought about these things is it would make sense to me that you want the number to be lower.
Right. You want to know, like, what its relationship to you is. Like, it's not about Yeah, it's because you think about it, it's about your run form, it's about your weight, it's about your mechanics, it's about how fluid you are, which are all variables you don't have to. You deal with weight obviously on a bike, but in terms of like the motion of your body when you run, like you could have Mike Tirale 1.0, Mike Tirale 2.0. And the one who lands heavy, right, who just has like poor run form and you're all over the place, you're going to have a certain power based on that, but then you're going to have also a lower power for Mike 2.0 who has a very efficient, like, pre-Fontaine level.
Like if you want that number to be...
Yeah. You're talking about if you want to be low or high?
I would think so, because I mean, is that how they work? I don't know. It's like if you are doing those long, heavy strides and landing heavier and maybe pushing off stronger, I mean, like, yeah, that's great, but does that make you more efficient in the long run is the question, So, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of bag of tricks in there.
Well, I mean, and they'll even tell you this, like the biggest question for stride users is like, the number on the stride screen or your watch isn't really mechanical power. It's also not metabolic demand, though it is proportional to it. So where do they kind of meet in the middle? And I find it fascinating that they've been around for 4 or 5 years and then came out with basically a brand new paper basically saying, well, I know that we, said this in 2015 in this article, but now 5 years later, I think we're actually going for this, which I think is a good thing. Like, it's always good for companies going to come back out and say, forget about the number. The number is not important. It's what it represents that matters. Which again, most athletes are way too caught up in numbers anyway. And in my opinion, the more reasons to stare at your watch, the worse the tool. I know that sounds terrible, but for most athletes, like, I know athletes that run with it. I work with athletes that they like to run off power, and I still poo-poo it just because I stop looking and just run. And these are, honestly, the athletes that I work with that work off power, I think it holds them back when it's time to race, because it's just one more input to confuse. So if you're running and you're looking at running power and pace and heart rate, which one do you go with? Right? Which one are you going to go with that day? And then you also have that fourth one, which is the most important one. How do you feel? Right? Mm-hmm. So you're going out for a normal 50-minute run, or you're lining up on race day, and you feel incredible, right? You feel like I got everything. Like this is it. This is my day. You take off the first 500 yards, and then the next half mile, the next mile. You look down your watch, and you've got your power number, you got your pace, you got your heart rate, and they all look totally different from what you would assume they would normally be like. But you feel incredible. Now what are you gonna do? But according to my power, I need to rein it back. And your body's thinking like, dude, like what? Like, let me rip it today. Like, and those athletes, in my opinion, tend to always hold back more because they are maybe not. I don't want to say that it's the actual device that's holding him back. It's paralysis by analysis. It's too much thinking. Just go run. Like, don't be afraid to blow up. And I think that's where you have too much. Too much input and not a knowledge of your output.
Yeah, I can almost see how that'd be valuable in the beginning of an Ironman marathon to hold you back.
Yes, agreed.
So shut it off at some point or whatever, or don't look at it anymore.
Trust
but like my thing with running is always like, just try to feel as light as you can. So it's like, I mean, I don't know.
I hear you. Joe says, would you recommend the use of an indoor rower to help supplement triathlon training? Having foot issues and running in particular is difficult to accomplish. Listen, there's a lot of...
Absolutely, man.
I always kind of let me just be honest. I always kind of laugh sometimes when I read people say, I'm doing triathlon specific weight training. I don't really know what that honestly means. Like, is there a weight training regime that is triathlon specific? Or there's always... I guess I don't get it. Like, and same thing with rowing. It's just it's an exercise, right? It's something you're doing for training. Is it going to boost your aerobic fitness? Yes, for your human body and for life, no matter what you're doing, it's going to help you. Do I think it has like a specific translation to swimming, biking, and running? No. Like, if your foot is hurting, but you can ride, then get off the rower and ride your bike more, right? Because that's at least a 1-to-1 ratio of what you're improving versus what you can get. Now, and same thing goes if you can get in the pool, and obviously we don't know Joe's predicament here. But if I would guess if he's on an indoor rower and he's working hard, then using your feet on that, it's actually can be quite uncomfortable with the amount of pressing you do if you're doing it really hard. Then get in the pool. And I don't know if Joe, you can get in the pool or not, but like, I don't know that that indoor row is it's not a supplement. It's something you can do to probably lessen the amount of fitness you'll lose, but it's not a replacement for actually being able to swim, bike. And I think sometimes we forget that as triathletes. If we have 3 sports, the best thing you need to do is do all 3. And we can quote unquote cross train and we can do different things off season. And yes, some of that translates, but it's not like you're doing triathlon specific cross training by doing rowing. You could also say, well, I'm going to go play basketball, right? 4 nights a week. I'm going to play 6 pickup games. Is that going to improve your overall fitness? Probably, right? It's going to wear you the hell out. Like in my opinion, is it triathlon specific cross training? No, it's just, I think that's another confusing part is that I work with an athlete who does predominantly cycling. In fact, he does all cycling, but he also does cross-country skiing. And this off-season, that's all obviously he did. He did cross-country skiing. He did a big race. I think it was like 32 miles. And then he's hopped on the bike the last week or two and has been an absolute monster. Having done almost little to no cycling while we were doing cross-country skiing. Total transfer, right? It's a total transfer. It's not a 1-to-1, but it's just overall fitness. Like what is making you a fitter person? That's why I think like oftentimes we love to label ourselves as this is a triathlon specific weight training program. Like, is it? Explain to me how exactly it's a triathlon specific that only triathletes going to benefit from this, strength training session. I think it's a lot of labeling, but we like labeling because it makes us feel special. When in general, it's just like, there's a transfer. You get really good at cycling. You're also going to be able to run well. You run a lot. You're also going to be a pretty decent cyclist. Like it transfers over. Find something to continually build your aerobic base. But if you're Joe and you can also ride your bike and swim, then go ride your bike and swim. If you can do those things. If you can't, then do what you have access to, which is, that's all you have to do with rowing, then, row your little heart out.
Yeah. I think if you're going to do, sometimes you don't feel like swimming. And if you feel like rowing, I think that's fine, and you talk about triathlon specific training. For me, that means training muscles that you don't typically use in triathlon. To me, so in other words, it's non-specific, but it's specific because it makes you stronger in areas that you just that kind of build that connect to the areas that are really strong. Whether it's like side legs or what. I mean, like that's what I was gonna say. If you want to do specific triathlon, it's probably basketball is a good one because it really or running. That's why we always like to run on trails because it's not that straight ahead kind of pavement thing. It really kind of makes your ankles stronger and all those types of things. And to me, I think what a lot of people neglect is like, you don't like, if you go out and ride 6 hours, you don't need to, go into the gym and do quad lifting. You know what I mean? Like all the time. I think you do other stuff that makes those other muscles stronger and that can support those overly strong quads. I think that's where a lot of injury comes from, actually, is that your quads get so strong that they overpower certain other parts of the body and things like that.
You want to be a good athlete, and if it helps you be a good overall athlete, increase your fitness, and it's going to help everything. It's not like, again, we talk about this all the time. Like you could, with, athletes that are incredibly good cyclists, and they come over and they can go out and probably run a blistering 5K. They probably can't run a marathon because they don't have the durability, right, to hold up for a long period of time. But they can probably go, I'm sure like the Tour de France riders in that kind of shape can go out and just smash an absolute 5K all out, right? They don't hop out there in their 5K and they're like, sorry, Chris Froome, you haven't ran a lot this year, so we can't engage your running fitness, right? It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. You still, overall fitness is still overall fitness. But I think, as in, like we always like to, label things what they are. Because it doesn't makes it feel unique and it's easily sell. Dave Cravata, what is your best dad joke? Man, this is it. I have a long list of dad jokes. But I was thinking about it this morning. What are you laughing at? Man, there's a lot.
I'm just happy that you addressed that question.
Actually. I did. I was thinking about this morning.
I'm not a dad, so I'm not going to address it.
Yeah, I slept on it, and you're a dog dad. I had my breakfast, and then I had a little vitamin regime that I was going through this morning, or that I go through, and I was chopping up some pills and getting ready to put them in my smoothie. And Hayden was like, "Dad, what are you doing over there?" And I said, "I'm crushing iron." I actually just made that up on the fly. I'm not sure what my best dad joke is. That's the thing about being a dad. You make them up all the time and no one laughs and they just can't look at you and they with that face. It's like, you're not funny. But what they're really trying to say is, I'm trying really hard to not laugh at you right now. That's what dad jokes are all about. You don't want laughter. You want someone to look at you and kind of shake their head like, no, don't do that again. But inside what they're really saying is, I can't believe I thought that was funny. Just hold your line and don't smile and laugh. That's what the dad joke is about. It's not about getting people to laugh. It's about showing people how awesome you are with your intellect and your quick-wittedness for them to be like, I can't believe this shit. Like, how does he come up with this? Like, it's impossible. You don't hear mom jokes, right? Like, it's just, they have a whole different line of jokes. It's something to do. It can't be replicated. It's a dad joke thing.
It is a dad joke thing. I was walking Maddie this morning as it was cloudy and rainy and like cold, and we're just standing out like in the middle like of this industrial park area. There's no humans around and all this kind of stuff, and it's pouring rain. And I look down and I go, "Isn't this great to be out here in the rain?" And she just looked at me with those eyes, with that fur all like nappy looking, and she did not want to be there. She
was like, "Why haven't you taken me home already?" Like, this is
sweet, right?
Sweet.
And we just had a little conversation.
At a moment. So you are a dad. So you know how it is.
Yeah.
She just didn't talk back and tell you that she hated you.
I know, but I brought her home and toweled her off.
That's right. That's what you did.
I did.
Tegan Jones, pools reopen next week here in the UK, giving me 8 weeks to get swim ready before triathlon season.
Attaboy.
Tegan, are you talking about swim ready or Speedo ready? Thoughts on getting the most out of these 8 weeks in the pool?
What is that?
Just swim
40
as
swims.
much as you can, like
5 a week.
Listen, guys, like you can't make up time that you lost. Like, that's a huge thing that athletes struggle with. You can't just make up time. How do I get them the same way? And I know Tegan, I've worked with him for going on 3 years now. He's as consistent as they come. Just keep doing what you've been doing, right? Like, he's also a natural swimmer. So just do the swims that I give you and don't miss. That's it. Because we can't control what we haven't done. We can only control what we're doing today and where we want to go from here. Like, that's called a step forward. You can't always obsess about looking in your fitness rear view mirror about the last few months that you haven't done. Like, be as consistent as you can now. And Tegan, I know you well. I'm not worried about your swim, dude. Brandon Gray, tips and tricks to staying in the zone 2 runs. I think you addressed that really, really well at the beginning of the podcast. But again, I think a quick and easy way to do it is if you can breathe in and out of your nose 85-90% of the time you're having a conversation. Obviously, like, there's no. And I went over this yesterday in our weekly Zoom call. Is like, I think it's important for athletes to understand that there is, I think I've actually gone over this before, is that, the beginning and the end of zones aren't concrete, right? They aren't like it. You have to look at it more as like you would look at the colors of a rainbow. They all blend into one another. It's not a definite end of red and a definite start to orange and then a definite end of orange and a definite start to yellow. Like, they blend into one another. That's how training zones are. And your body understands that, but I think athletes don't. It's like, and I kind of joked about this yesterday, is like, you send out, again, John, the spin instructor, like, hey, John, go out and run, a 50-minute zone 2 run. He's in zone 2 and he's cruising around. He's like, I got it. But then he goes up a hill and he's like, and his body's like, okay, engage zone 3. We have now entered. We went from an 8:50-minute mile and a 155 heart rate. We are now at 8:49 and we are a 156 heart rate. Engage zone 3. And you get done and you're like, coach, sorry, dude. I totally got in zone 3 today. I'm sorry. I totally messed up the workout. I got in zone 3. Like, that's not how it works. Like, there is, like, the same thing goes with cycling. Like, they blend together. Some days you're better off being at the low end. Some days you're better off in the high end. Again, it's also a correlation between energy output, feel, heart rate, all of it. And so, if you can breathe in out of your nose, and again, think of just, is this with oxygen? Yes. And more oftentimes, the answer to your question is always, yeah, I should probably slow down a little bit, right? No one ever gets hurt from slowing down or gets a worse benefit by slowing down. Remember, it is the minimal effective dose you should be going for, not the maximum. And I use this all the time as an analogy. When you go into the doctor's office, hopefully, and you have a predicament, and they're like, hey, I'm going to prescribe you, the 200 milligrams should get the job done, right? They're not going to be like, 200 should probably get the job done. But you know what? Just to make sure, let's do 6, right? Let's triple it just to make sure we nip in the bud. No, No,
I
they
know
give
a
you
lot of people like that.
it's true. Like you get the minimal effective dose to take care of things. That's what you should go for. You don't get extra points for going harder. What you're actually probably doing is taking away, and people do this. Like I thought about this on my run the other day. I was like, I think I was supposed to run for an hour and I got like 7 point something miles, and I ended up on like this really crazy round number, like off round number, like 1 hour, 1 minute and like 22 seconds and like 7.19 miles, like whatever. And I thought about, and there are a lot of athletes that like will cruise the parking lot doing it for the extra, like that dose is meaningless. It does nothing. You're not at the end of the week, you're going to say, man, I'll tell you what, man, that last 0.2 miles I got this week from running in the parking lot and making my numbers even, game changer. My fitness has increased exponentially. That doesn't work like that. You're going for the minimal effective dose, and that's how you think about aerobic training too. Is and you think, oh, but I'm running slower, and it should feel easy. It should feel aerobic. It should feel with oxygen.
And that goes the other way, right? When you see somebody that had an hour zone 2 ride and they said, I ran out of time. I only got 52 minutes in. And I'm like, that is going to be fine. I'm pretty sure.
That's going to be.
But it's like, I've been thinking about zone 2
when you cross that finish line and you missed your PR, I'm going to say, Mike, dude, remember back March 22nd when you cut that 60-minute run 8 minutes short? Well, this is what you get.
I've been talking to people in the club and my athletes lately a lot about zone 2 because, obviously for me, it's such, and he said any tips, and I think the big part of zone 2 is mentally being okay with it, like before you get into it. So I've been trying to think of them lately as, you got 35, 40-minute zone 2 run today. Think of it as a glorified day on the couch. It's sort of like this recovery day with some movement involved. So it's like, don't up your energy output too much because it's got a purpose for the next day and the next day to come or whatever. So just if you can mentally get your head in this idea of like, well, I could sit on the couch, but I'm just going to go out and do something a little bit harder. It doesn't, so it's sort of like, how do you wrap your brain around the idea that you're just going way too slow for how you want to go? But just like you're saying, enjoy the oxygen and don't look at the time.
I love that phrase. Enjoy the oxygen, like that. But it's so simplistic. That's how 80% of your runs should feel like, is you're literally enjoying your run, enjoying it with oxygen, right? It's like don't want to deprive that's when you become exhausted. Like if you're running too hard all the time, because guess what? The majority of your Ironman race is going to be hopefully with oxygen, right? If you're not doing your Ironman race, or a lot of athletes for their 70.3, if you're not doing it with oxygen, it's going to be a long day, right? You're going to be zone 3, zone 4 for how long? It's not going to feel comfortable. Train that zone, train that system. Danny boy, I think.
Danny boy.
When chat 70.3 happens, smiley face emoji, will you have C26 gear to purchase? Thank you. I'm going to drop a ball here.
Are you?
Yep, I've heard from I won't call them a reliable source, but I will say that I've heard from a government employee in some facet of the government that Ironman has permits in hand for Chattanooga 70.3.
Ooh.
I don't know if that's real or false, but I'm gonna take it as good news. And 100%, yes, we will be having a C26 for our team, for our athletes, for our club, for podcast listeners. We will be having a shindig get together here at some point. We'll be wide open, baby. Garage doors up. We're expanding our backyard to give people some free space to relax and maybe have some cornhole out there. Maybe have a post-race party over here. But yeah, we'll have gear. We'll have a get together. We'll have some fun. And we look forward to having everybody in the city and welcoming them to Chattanooga. If it's your first time, it's an awesome city. And we look forward to seeing everybody here in May.
Yeah, we're gonna have bring your cash, bring your Bitcoin. We're gonna be selling everything.
Bring your Bitcoin.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. We've got gear now, and we may have some special gear. We're gonna have cornhole, you name it.
We're gonna have special gear.
I don't know. That's been discussed.
Yeah, you just discussed it.
I think I've discussed it with somebody.
Oh, okay. Well, that's out of the loop. We hired somebody. Stuart Rogers, what's the single stupidest triathlon purchase you see people make, both one-off and something you see too often? Hey.
Why do you got to go negative, Stu?
Well, because let me tell you about Stu. Stu is
What's the last thing he
Stu
bought?
is a finance guy, right? He's looking to spend the least amount of money possible, right? Isn't that right, Meg? I coach Stuart and his wife. I would. People are gonna hate me for this. I think there are two in the top. Okay, there are two very, very high on my list. Stupid purchases, and that is to go straight in on like a $15,000 tri bike that people like go right in and purchase, not knowing how to handle a bike, not knowing having ridden a bike in like 30 years. They go straight in to drop in $10K on a bike that they don't know how to ride. They're not comfortable riding it, and then they only ride it inside. Right. And then come race day, they're like, I don't really know how to handle this weird alien ship of a piece of equipment. But I tell you what, I'm going to look really good sitting upright on my $15,000 Cervelo P5X while you guys are flying by me with my, $6,000 wheels, making it like an $18,000 bike. But you know what? It looks good, don't it? Yeah, it looks good while you're sitting up, treating it like a road bike.
It's too much stress, man.
It is, dude. It's too much. The other one, the first trainer you ever get should not be a smart trainer. It absolutely, I'll say this right now, as a coach, it absolutely drives me up the wall. The amount of people who purchase smart trainers and have no idea how to, one, use them effectively, B, only use them in ERG mode all the time and don't even know what that mode is and don't even know what it's doing and how it's uploads your workouts, how to control it. They don't even know how to control their smart trainer, and they also don't know how to shift gears, right? Going back to like the more input thing is too much. It takes away all like ability. Like I see this in Training Peaks all the time. Coach, I couldn't get my smart trainer. It will stop working. I just couldn't turn the gears over. How is that a thing? Like you put out, you don't know how to work the piece of software, and it makes it difficult. You can't even turn the pedals over. Like you can't ruining your workout. Like, guess how many people I've had ever say, Coach, my dumb trainer just wouldn't work today. It wouldn't work. Zero. Never. There has never been a trainer malfunction from a dumb trainer. Start out with a dumb trainer, learn how to shift, learn how to create your own resistance, learn how to do things. Then migrate, if you want to a smart trainer, because they do have benefits. But if you're going to jump straight into a smart trainer, learn and understand what you can do with it and how you can do for it. Like what you can do with it. Stop. It's again, like triathlon is such a gear heavy sport that it's an information heavy sport that people assume that things that are necessary, they're not necessary. Like just because people have them and it's for sale doesn't mean it's necessary. Like it's like walking in Target, get what you came for, right? Just because there's 19 things on sale doesn't mean you need to leave with all 19 of them, right? Go in and get what you came for, get a bike trainer, buy a $150, $200 one off, off Craigslist, that's going to be indestructible, right? We had one the other day that caught fire, right? Like the butler, but you know what hasn't? The dumb trainer that I've had for 9 years still works like a charm, and I can still get all the resistance I need. I can still do all the things I need to do on it, and it works perfectly. And I've never had to send it back. It still works like a dream.
That whole time I was trying to think of something, and I really didn't come up with anything.
Yeah, well, I did.
You got two things. I think actually, if you're just getting into triathlon and you don't have a bike, buying a tri bike is pretty stupid. Out of the gate.
Right out of the gate. Unless, because I agree with you, unless you've been riding a ton, right? Unless you're a cyclist.
Oh, right? That's what I meant. Like if you're not used to riding a bike,
right? You haven't ridden a bike in 20 years. Like, that's a bike, and you're like, I don't even know how to. Where do these little like people? Again, the
reason why is because I hated it. Like I went pretty quick on that move.
You went ASAP into it.
I had a road bike of a friend's I was using. I rode a bike a lot in my life, and so I was like, I need a tri bike, and I got it, and I started doing it. I almost quit the sport because it's a different vibe, and then you get used to it and everything like that because especially if you love it and you've done a few and you want to keep going. And I think it is obviously a good purchase at some point, but don't feel obligated, I guess is what I'm saying.
Knowledge is power. And to the same extent, not having the knowledge means there's a whole lot of weakness going on. Like you have to know these things to be able to use them to the best of their ability. But in triathlon, we just see things, or we go to the local, tri group ride, and so has a bike, and so you know what? I'm gonna get those. I need those. I need those wheels. Like, Well, no, not if you can't handle them, because most people can't handle deep dish wheels. Like they don't ride outside enough anymore to be able to use them.
Thing.
You know, it's like
it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. But that, I would say those are my top two. But again, if you know how to use them right, they can be very useful. But if you don't, they're more of an inhibitor, I think, on overall development.
What do you think of this?
Yeah, I think we'll maybe hit
Should we read how about if we read the next two questions, and they'll be coming on the next podcast, and then we'll wrap this one up.
Are these called teasers?
Yes, they are.
This is your old line of business, so I'll let you handle it.
Oh, it makes me feel.
Makes you cringe, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes me feel kind of
dirty.
Yeah. Erica wants to know, during training, are headwinds a good substitute for hills on the bike? Ooh, good question. We'll answer that on their next podcast.
Look at you. Nicely done. You haven't missed a beat.
And Carl, this one I can't even understand. Can you explain TSS and IF in Training Peaks?
Training stress score and intensity factor.
Yeah, we'll go over that. For example, if I'm unable to complete the prescribed workout for me, is it then best to try and match the prescribed TSS and IF with the limited time I have? Thanks in advance. You're welcome, Carl, and we'll be getting to that next podcast.
Channel 2, if you're hiring, Mike Torelli is looking to get back in the business.
Yeah, they don't want me anymore.
They don't want me either, obviously.
I've been a little too critical of their...
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
You want me to go on a media rant?
No, I don't want you to go on a media rant. We'll do that.
I could do it
on our. Listen, you and I both good. We'll make that a special podcast episode, a bonus cast that we'll hide on the black net or whatever they call it, so no one can find. But those have been awesome questions. We'll get to those other ones on Monday. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Hope you got something out of the first questions. We'll get to the rest of them on Monday. Head to our website, C26Triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. As long as it also has our club coaching, which is still going on and available. Mike handles that. Click on coaching, scroll down 3, and all the info is there. You can also click on meet the coaches. We've added 2 new coaches recently and promoted within the ranks. So if you're looking to get coaching and Mike and I or Jessica aren't your cup of tea, then we have some chamomile and some misty mint now on with Phil and Nicole. More personalities are better, and more people are always a good thing. We're trying to reach and help as many people as possible.
A little more Earl Grey.
Earl Grey. Oh, shots fired. Shots fired. Yeah, I think Earl Grey is a solid one. But yeah, look through those and welcome them. As always, if you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to Mike directly. He's at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions for me specifically, I'm at C26coach@gmail.com.
All right, one more. Coming up on the next Crushing Iron podcast. Without access to the pool, what? We'll get into that next time.
You lost it.
I have.
You're rusty. So rusty.
Thankfully, I want to be rusty.
Yeah, you got to be rusty.
All right, buddy. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah,